Alrighty, so welcome. Happy Saturday to everybody and for our swag staff. This is Staff Clinic 2.0. I am super excited and I just want to thank Brandon and Diallo for joining me first thing here. Hopefully we'll have a couple more. I've done and shared my screen. Just wanted to confirm, Brandon, you have no issue seeing the Staff Clinic 2.0?
I can see it.
Perfect. All right. So without further ado, one of the biggest things that we decided to do, well, I decided was let's talk about some comparisons. And so when we talk about comparisons, the biggest thing that we wanted to do is what does a swag ball compare against another manufacturer's ball? And so this allows staff to have talking points. This allows staff to feel a little bit more comfortable. This is also one of those things that is a little bit of subjectivity. And I say subjectivity with sincerity because remember, sometimes these are going to have similar RGs and differentials. I'm going off of a 15-pound ball. I'm not even going further into the matrix by trying to do a 13 or a 14 or even a 16. Um, the other thing that I also wanted to kind of factor into the conversation piece on this talking point was how similar the ball motions are going to be. And the intent is to create talking points that not create gospel. So when you're having a conversation with a potential customer or even somebody that says, hey, I don't understand this spike thing, talk to me about it, use words like, here's how I see it, or here's some similarities between this and that. The more that you're able to kind of generalize, but also kind of move the conversation forward, you're going to see yourself as just having that as an opportunity as we kind of bring it all together. Okay. So when we talk about RG, radius of gyration, a low RG ball is going to typically have an early roll. It's also going to be smooth and it's going to have a strong motion. Now, when you talk about a high RG ball, it's going to have a little bit of more of a late hook, a little bit more length, and have more sharp back end. So if you think about it, it's going to be kind of a hockey stick motion versus that continual motion that's going to have that strength that kind of comes through. The other easy way to remember it is the fact that typically low RG balls you're going to have is going to be best for heavy oil, allowing you to kind of control your shots. High RG balls are going to be more specifically for dry lane skid flip motion, and it's best to have bullet your bag kind of balanced. So even for you staff, if you want to check this out, I mean, take a look at the balls that you take to the league. Are they all high RGs? Are they all low RGs? Do you have a balance and a mix in between? When you're having a conversation with a customer, take a look at their bag. Are they top heavy or are they bottom heavy or do they actually have a mix? Another analogy that I think is probably the best that you can kind of use is use the golf bag analogy. So, if I was to say, Brandon, if you look at your the six balls that you take to the league, how many of them are, let's say, drivers, woods, irons, or even your putters, or putter being your spare ball, or even being your iron or your wedges, which is going to be even something lower tier like that, like the craze or something like that. So, it's one of those pieces where, what would you say in your bag? How would you say your bag kind of equates itself as?
I would probably say I have more irons in my bag than I do like drivers. Because usually with the drivers, you only see that in taking golf analogies. You start off with the driver, you use it for one shot, or you kind of trying to specifically do one specific thing with it. And then I have more irons than I would do, say, or wedges, because those are more like niche. So I like to have a lot of bowling balls that can do multiple things and kind of fit a specific thing where I'm bowling. But it also depends on the center, and obviously we know that. But for the most part, I would say that my bag is pretty. I do have that driver, I do have that putter, I do have that wedge, but then in the middle, I have all my irons. And so I would say, one is, that driver, one is that putter, and then in the middle, I may have three irons, and then I have that one wedge, so that I have a complete bag.
Absolutely makes sense. And so that's kind of one of those things is you're talking to a customer, kind of peel back the layers, understand specifically what do they have in their bag. A very easy question to ask is, are we replacing anything in your bag? Or are we actually adding something that you may not have? If you see that they have high end ball, high end ball, high end ball, high end ball, it probably makes sense that they need something that's going to be on the lower end of the spectrum. And that's also going to create an opportunity because now what you're doing is you're actually listening to the customer, offering suggestions and providing opportunities for things to make sense so that it just resonates a little bit easier for the customer to have a better understanding. When you use a golf bag analogy, it's a very easy transition because a customer can visualize and see specifically how their ball necessarily may match up. Some staffers will use, whether or not you're using mudding tires versus street slicks, or, this ball rolls like a tank versus this ball is kind of like that hockey stick motion, which you kind of like equates to like a fighter jet, fast, sleek, sharp turns and stuff like that. Whereas a tank's going to kind of dig in the dirt, dig in the pattern, and kind of have that slow continual move. So that's kind of what we talk about with the radius gyration from there on that. Now, when we talk into the differential, so differential is going to be kind of something on where if you have a high differential, you're going to have wild, strong back end motion with lots of flare. And if you have a low diff, you're going to have smooth, steady, and predictable roll. Now, if you take a spare ball, that is obviously going to be low diff. And if you take a high performance ball, that's obviously going to be it's going to be a little bit higher diff, obviously, than the low diff. So this is where you can kind of see, even when you're looking at a customer's ball or you're looking at your own ball, depending on how many flare rings you have or how much it flares around the ball, is going to be very specific in just kind of giving you some notion of, okay, what does this ball specifically do? And then also kind of give you some of those pieces. So as we go through some of these comparisons, what we did was I also notated about flare potential along with some of those pieces. Now you will have some anomalies. And this presentation, after you watch this recording, you're probably going to be like, nah, James, you're wrong. You got this wrong. Totally up for discussion. It's one of those things where nothing's ever set in stone. However, let's start with a very good talking point. So with that, we're going to carry into the first one. Okay, so your judge has an RG of 2.49, a differential of 0.052 with a mass of 0.19. That's the judge solid and the judge pearl. Now, one of the things that you'll also see is that if I was to go ahead and then cross analyze between all the other manufacturers, we're talking about the new Radical Evil Eye. You're talking about the Rotogrip Attention Star. You're talking about the Deviate Mantra. You're talking about the Criterion series. Even the Storm Viking and the Ebonite GB5 and the Entity all kind of fall into that same demographic as the judge. So if they're coming from one of these balls, or you see that they have one of these balls, or they're looking to replace that they had one of these balls, this is where the judge certainly comes into play and kind of makes things this a little bit easier. And it also kind of now kind of lends itself to makes a little bit more sense. Especially when you kind of look at, I was watching some of the motions on the Evil Eye and I was like, okay, I can see that, especially with the judge, especially on the judge solid. So this is kind of where this comes into play of just seeing those specific different balls and from the different manufacturers, and notice that it can be something that's shiny and also dull. Okay.
Question on that. So, and right at the end, you said what I was about to ask, the shiny adult. So let's say, for example, it looks like the Criterion Inverse. And I'm not sure if that's a pearl or not, but the attention
It's a
star is
pearl.
that one. Okay. So at what point, let's say, for example, all these balls have similar diffs and they have similar RGs and obviously similar masses. At what point, let's say a person says, oh, I had the Criterion Inverse, but I need something different than that. I want that same motion, but maybe a little bit different than that. How do you, as a pro shop person, decide whether they should go with the Judge Pearl or the Judge Solid with their, obviously they having the same numbers, but just different color side?
Great question. And so the way that we're going to bridge that gap is we're actually going to get them out on the lanes. We're going to take a look and see where their path's at. We're going to need to actually back in the layout numbers for that criterion. I mean, even if it's criterion, so criterion is the pearl, or I believe it's the hybrid. You do have a criterion pearl and you also have a criterion. But
Mm-hmm.
if we're talking about trying to make sure that we're kind of getting a really good dial in, this is where you want to see them throw the criterion. You want to kind of notate where their path's at, and let's see, is that drilling that was put on that criterion, was it a strong drilling? Was it a weak drilling? I mean, and was the pin to path distance, if you have a ball that was, let's say, 40 by 4 by 25, that's set up for max drilling, and maybe the lanes are a little bit dry. So what you could do is you can actually take and put a different drilling or a different layout on the ball that has the same similar numbers, and you're going to get a more reaction out of it just simply by manipulating the drill. So that's the other beautiful part about this is the first step is to identify a ball that they have or they're looking to replace. What ball would make sense from our line? Here's how we're going to do it. And then now we're going to take it to the next step. And if on the asymmetrical ball, the pin's kicked so far to the right user for a right hander, and let's say it was like a 2.5 or 3.5 inch pin. Well, obviously it's not taking advantage of the strength of the ball. So this is where getting it into four, maybe 4.5, possibly five, depending on how far you need to get down the lanes, would be that complementary approach so that you can kind of get it to that next piece. So yeah, the other big thing is just simply understanding the layout and then having it kind of align itself with the ball selection.
Good.
Okay, so the next one, my favorite one. So the Dragon is a very interesting piece because the sweet spot on RG differential is about, some people are going to argue with me, but I think a 248 and an 054 diff or right around there is by far one of my favorites. And so when we talk about that, you're talking about the Storm Equinox, you're talking about the Global Origin, you're talking about the Hammer Black Widow, you're even talking about the Radical Torpedo Solid, or the Hammer Maximum Effect. You also have Stealth Mode, you have the Phase AI, the Ion Max Pro. Now, just before signing with Swag, I actually had an Ion Max Pro, and usually was the first big ball out of my bag. But what's interesting is knowing the fact that the similarities, the Dragon series, and this is again complementary to how you have it drilled, will also give it more, give it less. And so this is a sweet spot that when you're talking to customers, you more than likely you're going to see possibly one of these balls sitting in their bag, whether it's an old Black Widow, whether it's the Origin has been very successful for global. Brian, what's going on, sir? And so the stealth mode, I think, has also been a very big piece of this in that continuation. And believe it or not, the Equinox literally is number for number identical. And so that's kind of where those kind of comes in. But yeah, the Black Dragon is, and these balls really do get that reputation of being more utility based, meaning you can get deep into your series with your league because they're not going to be that heavy oil monster, and they're going to have some of that continuation or some of that versatility as you kind of see all the way go through. Next one is the Apex series. So the Apex series is a very unique series. I'll tell you, the more I keep throwing my Apex, the more I keep enjoying my Apex. But what's interesting is when you look at the different ways that this is going to kind of come through. We're talking as far down as the Hammer Vibe. Now that Arctic Vibe is very similar. The new Motive Nebula, the Columbia Pulse. Now some of these are ASIMs, and the Apex series is symmetric. So there are that once again kind of goes back to that piece that we talked about having similarities. Now core shapes and tires will be a little bit different, but if we're talking about kind of in the same family, even the Motive Pride kind of fit into there. But I have seen that through the Apex series being drilled a variety of different ways. There's so much versatility to these that they do have that ability of being a low tier on your bag, or they can also be one of the highest tiers in your bag. So it just simply kind of brings it to that effect. Also, if you're working with a customer that, let's say, is new to the game, this is a really good solid benchmark spot. Along with, you can also look at this with them, or let's say if you have a customer that's a little bit older, has a little bit less ball speed or rev rate, this is a good series that's going to you can kind of fit them in and not have to worry about being too much. And so that's kind of one of those things that the Apex series has allowed is either solid or pearl. It's that right combination, and with the right drilling, it does make things a little bit easier. But these are the balls that I had found that align most well with the Apex series. Any questions on that?
With the Apex's motion, which is a definitely much smooth, just looking at the numbers here, a much smoother motion. It's basically back to the same question that I asked before, where obviously I've thrown both of these balls. These have a little bit different motion than some of the other ones. Again, when you're looking at how to drill these or what you're replacing in someone's bag, with this series, it seems like this would be more of a compliment to what somebody's bag. I don't think that when you look at these balls, you're going to say, I'm going to take this out of your bag and put this in your bag. These are complementary balls to say, you know what, if I have too much of this, yes. If I have not enough of this, then go with this one. In your opinion, since you really do like the Apex series, when you're talking to customers about these specific two balls, what do you specifically tell them and say, um, when you recommend this ball to them? Is it more so, okay, are you looking for smooth motion? What is kind of your line of questioning to put this in someone's hands?
So great question. First thing I'm going to see is do they have a vibe in their bag? Or have they ever thrown a vibe? Honestly, one of the fastest things that I saw that was very similar, um, having personally thrown vibes. Unfortunately, there's probably seven or eight, nine retired sitting in the garage right now that are vibes. Just ask my wife; she has like 12. It's a very utility specific ball.
Okay.
It's one of those balls where if you want to control the lane and you have that ability because it's a little bit more on the lighter oil side, this is where you can kind of put that in. You kind of hit the nail on the head. If you have high end ball, high end ball, high end ball, obviously that apex is a very logical step down, and it's going to give you some continuation, and it's also going to give you some options. I guess is probably the best way. The other thing that I've also seen with the apex is that the more that you tweak or you modify the cover stocks, you're going to see completely different motions coming from the balls themselves. Now, a 3.5 inch pin to pap distance on an Apex Solid or an Apex Pearl is going to be vastly different than a 4.5 inch pin because on a symmetric, 3.5 is max hook. And so the more that you have a max hook layout with even, let's say, a 20 or 30-degree valve angle on the back end is going to produce a higher tier benchmark piece than, let's say, something that was like pin over the bridge, which is normally incorporating around 4.5, and maybe a little bit swooping angles. So that means it's not as sharp. And this is really where you can take that apex and you can define the motion and tune it the way you want to and get it really versatile. So I think the biggest talking point that I would say for the Apex series is the versatility that comes with it. And not only the fact that you have the solid and you also have the pearl. And there is a significant difference between both solid and pearl. And so that's kind of the other piece that I definitely would kind of resonate to staff is the fact that there is a significant difference where, sometimes you have like their solid and the pearl are almost identical, which makes it difficult because then the question is, okay, which one do I get? This is where you can see on the Apex Solid, the Apex Pearl, you can definitely see a difference in the motion for sure. Great question. Okay, throwing it to this one. This was a very interesting conversation that I had. Um, because what I saw with the Unreal, and then when I was taking a look at the balls that kind of matched up to it, I was like, okay, really? Possibly? Is this what we're looking at? And so one of the things that we definitely see that's different with the Unreal is that RG differential of 251. With the RG with 251, the differential of 047, it is asymmetric, but it is a symmetric that allows you a lot of different lane plays. And one of the biggest things that I can see with the Unreal is it's one of those balls that I think we can attest where, you can kind of get left, throw it right, watch the ball come back, have no issues. But one of the other things that I've also seen when I use my Unreal is that if I need to play tighter angles, I can use this Unreal and it's just going to hold and hold, and just be very versatile in that aspect. And so that's where you can see it with the Turbo X. You can see it with the Mesmerize. You can certainly see it with the Combat. The Guru Oracle is a sanded asymmetrical. So that's going to be, in Radical's eyes, that's their big ball minus the evil eye. And so with that, you kind of see, okay, The Unreal is going to have some different differential character shapes. That Groover is going to start sooner unless you stand that Unreal. But if you have that Unreal, it's going to have that same motion where it's going to get down lane and then it's just going to see a defined motion, which is coming off of that 251. And so when you have that defined motion of 251, it's literally, the ball's going to get off the spot with no problem. Turbo X doesn't have an issue. The Mesmerize doesn't have an issue. Even the Brunswick Infinity Quest, they got that, in my opinion, I think a little bit better than the original one, where I think the original one didn't necessarily line up the way they wanted it to. And so this is where they came out with that re-release on the Affinity Quest that allowed that additional versatility piece. Between the Apex and the Unreals being in the same line made it fun and difficult at the same time because really you can take them both out for a spin and decide which one you really want to kind of roll to. And I'm sure, have you kind of seen some similarities to this? I mean, I'm going to ask this question is, do the balls that you see selected here, do you feel like they fit or they don't fit?
And this one, I feel like it does fit. And the reason why I'm actually the ball that I compare it to more is that Super Cuda, because I've seen that one on the lanes and I kind of see what do it. And Unreal to me makes very much that same motion. But what I have seen with that Unreal is, and I have an actual teammate that throws this one too, is that, as you stated before, he can move his feet right and change his hand position just a little, get up the back of it a little bit more, and it will hold that line without losing its power. But what I did notice is if the lanes were how can I say, not I'm not gonna say cliff, but they kind of get that as we say, shimwrecked a little bit, where you got
Yeah.
to move in a little bit and kind of wheel it. It will make that motion, but it seems to shut down a little bit more on that one from what I've seen. But it also could just be lane topography from where I'm at. But it to me, it reminds me of that Super Cuda. I know we've had the Hutchie, Charles Hutchison say it's more like a phase two. I didn't really see that. To me, these balls match it better. What I thought was odd about this diagram when you pulled it up is that you have something as like the Guru and you have the Mesmerize and even the Infinity Quest there, but then you have Columbia's re-release of the Messenger Power Core. So it just shows you how versatile that ball is because that Power Core wasn't made to be very in the category of these, but it just shows you how versatile that Unreal is because it could be something as scaled down as a messenger, but it could be up at there at the top is like the Cuda and the Mesmerizes and Infinity. So it's definitely one of those balls that will be in the middle and that you can kind of do everything with.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of one of those other things is that you're seeing with the Apex and you also see with the Unreal is it does have lend itself as an opportunity for a variety of conditions that are whether they're cliffed or whether they're just getting wonky or there's something weird. The Unreal normally comes with me as a failsafe. Like everything else in the bag did not necessarily respond or did the right thing. And if I need something that I know I can guarantee and get the right response, it's the Unreal. And so that's where, having that conversation. Now I'll tell you, Ebonite Turbo X has been a fantastic release for them because it allows when the lanes get weird, it allows, consumers to be able to pull that ball out of the bag and kind of use it. So, it's one of those things where, sometimes the claim is made that Spike doesn't have the right motions. And this is where I can say, hey, we can cover quite a bit on a footprint and just kind of take it from there. And I think that's just the other biggest thing too, for sure. Now, the next series is going to be probably the one that's going to have a lot of conversations. Um, and I already know that's going to be the case. And so I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there into the universe and space. And let's have a conversation on this. Fusion 242 RG has a 254 differential of 036. Obviously, there's no mass, but when I took a look at the motion and kind of the similarities, and again, I see it lining up, believe it or not, identical to a Radical Sneak Attack, which for Radical, the Attack series and the Sneak Attack series was probably their best get out of jail free card. To make a claim that it's an IQ Tour or a Venom Shock is a really big, pun intended, ballsy move because you're talking about two of the biggest goats. But one of the things that you're going to also see is that with those goats don't go east west. Those goats go north south, and they're best when they go north south. The Fusion, you can get a little bit east west, but they excel when you're playing north south. And so same thing goes with the Brunswick Alert, the Track Cipher, the Deviate Dark Side, which was a hit amongst all the tour players because if they need to keep everything in front of them and they need to keep the angles tight, or they need to see that predictable ball motion, that's where the dark side was, as well as the mode of throw. And so this is where I saw the Fusion kind of lining up the best and being where it's very comparable to these. Now, obviously, the conversation is somebody says, "Hey, I want to replace my IQ." Unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, you're going to say, "Okay, well, had you thought about just simply getting another IQ?" Or if you're looking at wanting something else, may I present to you the Swag Fusion Hybrid or the Swag Fusion? I mean, here's the thing. Again, I'm going to say it till I'm blue in the face. We're not trying to say our balls are better than theirs. We're just simply saying our balls can compete and hang with the best of them. When you're talking Venom Shock or you're talking IQ, that has forged its reputation and has made itself a mainstay in many people's bags. So don't go, staffers, do not go and say your Venom Shock sucks or your IQ sucks, because I'm going to tell you can't do that. I mean, that's just sacrilegious. But I will say though is if you're looking at something that has a similar motion to an IQ, or you're looking for something that has a similar motion to a Venom Shock, or you're comfortable with those types of motions, why don't you go ahead and give the Swag Fusion Hybrid or Fusion Solid a you know a shot or take a look at it. I assure you that'll come across a lot better than trying to even remotely say, those two balls are just overrated. But they're not. Let's go with it. So, what is your guys' feedback on this?
As you know, the Fusion Solid is my favorite ball. Before I side with swag, IQ was a staple in my bag. And I would keep it sanded at about 1,500 to 1,000. And exactly what you said, I would throw it forward. But what I did notice, the similarity with the IQ Tour and the Fusion, both of them right out of the box, they do want to go sideways until they get that breakdown. And then you see their true identity, which is to go north and south. And they are at their best when they go north and south. Now, obviously, if there is some friction on the lane, you can move in and shoot it to the friction and they will respond and they will still be their normal selves. They will carry with that if that friction is there. But their characteristic is that they like to go north and south. What I thought the eye comparison is usually when you talk about tour balls, it means smaller core, right? The cores tend to be a little bit smaller in those balls. But the fusion that we have, which is very nice core, it the thing about it is, and why I love it so much, and why it's the number one ball that comes out of my bag is as a lefty, where I'm going to play in a little bit more oil than the righties, it does not lose its energy and does not lose its hitting power. So there might be times where I have to move in because I do have two lefty teammates, but it just does not lose its energy. When it goes through the pans, it keeps that energy. And that's the same thing with the IQ Tour. And that's why the IQ Tour has been on, I think it's the only ball that has not been on out there as the Hyrule Pearl, right? That's the only ball that's been on the market longer than that one because it gives that opportunity. And I see that opportunity for the Fusion to be one of those balls, such as the Venom Shock as well, because that's been out there for a while too, to be one of those staple balls where, you know what? You got all this stuff in your bag and you're like, I just don't see it. Let me grab this and throw it. And immediately whatever's going on in the lane becomes available to you just because you have that ball and able to throw it. And so that is why it's one of my favorite ball of the swag balls, because I could just pick it up and no matter what, within a shot or two, I'm saying the lane is doing this. And now I can adjust to it, whether it's to stay in that ball or now I know what ball to go pick up. That's what that fusion allows me to do.
Absolutely. Brian, what's your take since I know you're also in the pro shop too?
Um, well, my teammate has had the Fusion since it released, and very much a north-south ball, especially for him. He's got two 300s on that ball, He just had a string of 4 consecutive 690 plus series with that
Oh
ball.
wow.
Um, so I mean, just watching him throw it, I have to agree with everything that's been said, especially, what Brandon was saying as well. For me personally, I have the hybrid, and we don't have a great amount of head oil up here. We don't have puddles in the middle. So, and the main house that we bowl at has a challenge pattern. That's their house shot. So it's the fusion.
Torture.
Well, it's not really. I mean, you just kind of got to get in there. I mean, it plays pretty consistently. So, I mean, that's all I can ask for. Let me
Right.
learn the shot. I mean, but the Fusion Hybrid has been absolutely my go-to ball now. I mean, I could probably walk in with that ball and a pair of shoes, uh, and I'm seeing my average climb. I do have to be east-west with it, though. I usually start around 27 or 28 with my feet, throwing it out to 8, but it keeps coming back. Uh, a ball I would compare it to, not currently in production, though, is the Hammer Web series. I
Very
see
much so.
very similar motion out of these. I loved the webs, the Web Pearl, the Web MB when I had them back before I joined California Men's Swag Bowling. So, but the Fusion Hybrid right now is just, it's my go-to. I mean, it's my benchmark. I can get left with it. I can wheel it to the right, and I can keep moving in with it. It's for the shots that we have to bowl on. It's money right now, absolute money.
No, makes
Yeah,
sense. Uh,
you know what? And to go back on Brian's point, I just bowled a tournament last week where I actually showed up. They gave us the wrong tournament time, so we showed up late. And I walked in the door, and shadow was already done, so I had to just walk up and bowl. And so of all the things in my bag, I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm grabbing my fusion because I'm not warmed up. My wrist is going to be not the way I want it to be. I'm not loose enough to get the ball off my hand correctly. And I walk in, I'm like, all right, I know what my fusion does. I know what that motion is. It's so predictable that I know, okay, if I throw it to this point, I should get this reaction. And right off the cold, and it was snowing here in Chicago, so it was cold outside. I walked in this off the street and I buried the first shot, no shadow, anything, because I just knew the motion. And that's the only thing that you can ask of a ball. So like Brian said, he could walk in a place with just that ball in his shoes and he feels like, all right, I could compete with anybody in here. That is to me what the definition of a benchmark ball is. And that's why that fusion to me is the best one that I have thrown. Now I have not thrown the Fusion Hybrid and I will be punching one up soon. But the reason why I haven't punched it up is because with the Fusion, I don't need it. I
Yeah.
can move in, I can move left. I don't need it. So I was like, well, maybe it's a little redundant. But I do want to punch it up because, like you said, it goes a little bit more east-west, and that's what I've heard from other people that have thrown it. But when you have a ball, which I'm guessing both of these do, and it gives you that predictable motion that you don't have to think, that's all the bowler can ask for.
Correct. And the other thing that we were talking about when, and Skylar, welcome to joining us and stuff like that. And then Hobby, if there's anything that you want to kind of chime in also, definitely has that an option. One of the things that I will definitely say is this. This set of bowling balls is not going to be like pretty. These things are going to be consistent. They're going to be predictable. And at times they could be boring, but that's sometimes what we need in life. And so it's one of those things where, you're going to know exactly where you're at because the ball's going to give you exactly what you need. And the downfall is you're going to have some customers or you're going to have some people that's like, nah, I want to see that thing jackknife off the back of the pattern. I want to see this thing do tricks. Why is this ball not doing tricks? And so as staffers, that what we can do is, especially if somebody bought a Fusion thinking it was going to replace, I don't know, maybe a Black Widow or something to that effect. There may be some letdown. And so one of the things that we want to do is we want to kind of make sure that we're logically putting them into the ball that makes sense based off of this. If you look down and there's six, let's say I use six balls as a reference because league, I always come in with 6. Sometimes it seems a little antiquated. I know some people come in with 2, some people come in with 1 or 3. But if they don't have anything that sits in this midline point, I think this is always usually going to be your first real good start, is dropping them here, because this is just going to fit well. And then as long as you educate on that fit and how it's going to work. The other thing that I would also say is be careful on the fusions. Do not try to go crazy with pin and pap distances that are exceeding like 4.5, 5, unless you have somebody that has, abnormal stats. That sweet spot with the fusion is going to be between 3.5 and 4.5. But try not to get too exotic with these things, because literally they do have a really nice intended purpose. And so we want to kind of make sure that we just kind of do that, because if not, then they may be like, well, this thing isn't rolling right. The other thing you may have to do is hit this thing or shine this thing up, because it depends. Brian, you're talking about how there's not a whole lot of oil. And, down here in Florida, we got a lake of oil, and I was crazy frustrated because I wasn't seeing the fusion doing what I thought it was going to do until I was able to adjust that surface and kind of get it down a little bit. And then all of a sudden I started seeing it pick up. Hobby or Skylar, is there anything that you would add to this that would say that this should be added into? Or even Diallo? Not sure if you're still working on the Subaru. Alrighty, I'm going to take that as a sign of nope. And so I'm going to move on. So the next one, phrase 252, differential 030. A mass obviously is not there because it is asymmetric. So if we're talking exact apples to apples, the Craze has the exact same numbers as a Hustle. Straight up. Has the exact same numbers as a Hustle. Even the Lightning Blackouts, the Radical Snapshots. The Typhoon has a little bit different numbers. And the Raw and Rhino sit at the low end. However, that Rhino that I have listed is the actual dull one. So that's going to have a little bit more teeth than, let's say, your standard Rhino. And the Raw series is a little bit more of a notch up from the Axe, or is a little bit more of a notch. So it does have a little bit of similarity, but maybe on a little bit of that low tier. And so the Tropical Surge is always the Tropical Surge. But overall, I mean, I think this is where your lower tier, your junior bowlers, this is where, this is the best way to introduce swag to somebody, because we really have this ball outperforming a lot. I think we put a lot of ball at a lower tier price points, which kind of helps. But also, if you think about that, the Hustle does the same thing, and the Typhoon does the same thing, and the Lightning Blackout is higher priced, but does have the exact same similar motions. Any thoughts, questions on this one?
I'm sorry, I didn't have my mic turned on. Last question. Well, we were talking about the Fusion. Were you talking about the Fusion Solid or the Fusion Hybrid or the Fusion in general?
Fusion in general, sir.
Okay, so the Fusion Solid, I did not pick up. One of the distributors in my area did throw it. He said it was kind of he said he thought he needed a stronger layout on it, but I did pick up the Fusion Hybrid, and for me the Fusion Hybrid plays bigger than the Apex Pearl. It's actually, for me, the Fusion Hybrid is earlier and more sharper than the Apex Solid. The Apex Solid is, for me, is longer with more back end motion.
Same drilling layout or a little bit different?
I believe they're the same layout. I was using 60 by 4.5 by 30, so I believe they're all the same. The Fusion Hybrid might have a little higher valve angle, like a 33 or 35.
Okay. So that makes sense. I mean, and the other interesting thing is this, and also I'm not sure, and here's not the I gotcha moment, but as staffers, you can put somebody in a 13-pound Fusion and they get the exact same core as a 15-pound. So if you have a junior bowler or you have somebody that is needing a lighter weight ball and you want to have them set up for performance, the Fusion is a very good option for that because the core stays intact, does not have to go to a generic light bulb core that you would see. You actually get the actual core itself, stays the same at 13 and also at 15. So that's a huge piece, especially for your junior bowlers that may be coming up from the craze, as opposed to if they wanted to transition to something next, where the Fusion kind of lends itself. Um, the Craze series is an interesting series. I have a lot of people, a lot of staffers up north. You make that thing turn tricks. Down here, I need friction, and so that's kind of that piece where, you know, um, I'm still working with my crazes to try to get the right amount of friction to kind of have it make the most amount of sense, because there's just times where for some reason, just doesn't catch. Not saying that there's anything wrong. It's just, and here's a very good key phrase that you can use to any specific customer. It just could be condition specific matchups where these things are going to match up condition specific. I'd love to say that we could say every single swag ball is going to work on every single pattern, but between layouts, between different aspects, that's where that's going to come into play, and that's where some of the challenges do fall into.
For the
Thoughts?
Craze series, as you guys know, I post all the time about the one that I sold to my friend Brandon. And I just watched him shoot 812 with it last night. The thing about that ball is I feel like it has outperformed this price point. And we could say that the hustle does that. I've seen the lightning blackout only a couple times because some teammates have thrown it, but I feel like the Craze Pearl has really outperformed its price point because of the fact that it makes a motion at that entry level that you usually don't see. A lot of those balls tend to be they can have some motion on the back end, but they kind of be flat when they get to the pocket, depending on who's throwing them, right? But to see people that throw the ball well and throw it on fresh, which is the like I said, I watched a guy throw it last night for all three games and shot 812 with it. There's no way I could throw that ball, and we're in the same house on the fresh and get it to wrinkle the first game. Just because of the conditions that we have out here in Chicago, we tend to have puddles in the middle. And the heads are very, very, very soaked too. So, but like you said, it could be specific conditions or condition specific, but it also can be bowler specific, right? So you could put this ball in one bowler's hand, and this ball may not work. Like you said, you need some friction, and then you can put it in another person's hand, and it is just the right fit.
Magic.
So yeah, it's magic. And so that's why I feel like this one outperformed its price point, both of them actually, because of the fact that if you can put this ball in somebody's hand and they can just, it could be magic. Usually that does not happen at this price point. Usually at this price point, that ball is specific for the burn or just, I need to straighten up and anything like that. But to watch the motion that it makes at that price point, this is to me the most underrated ball that came out this year for swag. This ball is really, really, really good.
I chuckle because I know the future. So with that being said, I think we did a very good job with the craze. I think we've done a very good job with being able to present again. And real quick, I'll back this up just so that we can kind of recap real quick. Was that when we're talking the judge, we're talking big ball, we're talking, the radical evil eye, the Ebonite Eternity, the Game Breaker series, the new Storm, or I'm sorry, the new Global Viking, the Deviate Mantra, the Rotogrip Attention Star, all fall in line with like the judge. Looking back again at the Black Dragon, we're talking obviously a Black Widow motion. You're talking the Storm Equinox series. There are some similarities to the Ion Max along with the Hammer Effect. Stealth mode, very similar, even though I believe I think that's kind of one of those pieces. Torpedo, phase AI. Phase AI is going to be a little bit more hockey stick motion ish. Just depends on, how it's laid out and stuff like that. Going back, let's roll into the Apex series, the new Motive Nebula. We're talking, the Hammer Vibe series along with the Ember. Now, a question that may come up that says, okay, well, why is Hammer selling the Hammer Vibe for so cheap and yet the Apex is a little bit higher? Hammer did that on purpose. So, in case if anybody is really historical value understands the Vibe has always been at that HP core level. It is a dynamic core. And so Hammer wanted to corner the market per se on providing a high performance motion with a low tier price point. I'm not sure if anybody knows back in the day, the Ebonite Tornado or no, Cyclone. The Ebonite Cyclone was the same thing, which was an HP core, low performance on tires. So that's how they were trying to create that introductory capture. And you're seeing that with us doing that on the Craze series. Brandon, you hit the nail on the head where we have the ball is outperforming its price points. Totally understand. I think that was kind of one of the topics that some staffers were saying before was this ball is outperforming its price point, or it's outperforming, the Apex series, outperforming this, that, or the other. Totally get it. Totally understand. Every environment is going to be different, and everything's going to look like a superstar depending on somebody's hand. And so that's kind of just simply understanding where it kind of aligns. We talked about, again, the Unreal and how many different ways that kind of comes through, whether it's through the Turbo X, the Mesmerize, the Combats, Super CUDA, and how the Unreal just has a little bit capabilities with surface or even layouts on this versatility. And then the Fusion, we just kind of wrapped into the Craze. And so with that being said, what questions can I help answer? That would be, is there any anxiety, or is there anything that you'd want to say, hey, James, I'm just struggling when it comes to talking to a customer about this, or just trying to even introduce swag to the conversation? Now's a great time to kind of throw different things at me and kind of, make it easier for you to have these conversations and talking points. How can I help? For my guys that are in the pro shop, it makes it a little bit harder because you guys are used to doing this. But, anybody, Hobby, Diallo, Scholar, I think you're bowling 300 right now, so I think that's fine.
I think the only one that I would have a question about is, and I asked the question earlier, is that Apex series. For you, it's a really good series. For me, it was not what I expected it to be, in a sense of just the motion. I even drilled and re-drilled it. When it comes to that, obviously being in a pro shop and we're talking to people, when it comes to that particular series, we always talk about what we want to put in somebody's hand. I want to know
make it easier for them. So here,
Yeah.
let me help you bridge this gap. Have them bring in all the balls that they're currently using in the league. Okay. Whether you jot it down on paper or whatnot, this may take, and this could be a different segment called Pro Shop, but let's for staff purposes, let's use this. If they say, hey, I want to give you a try, Brandon, you put me in the best ball that you think is going to make the most amount of sense. Okay. This is where you don't just simply go, okay, I'm going to put you in an Apex. I want you to take the balls that they're currently using, and I want you to map them out. I want you to see what they have. Do we have a bag full of drivers? Do we have a bag full of woods? Do we have a bag full of irons? Do we have a bag full? I mean, where are we missing something? Ask that question to the customer and says, hey, do you feel like you're missing emotion in your bag? What do you feel like you're missing, or where do you think the gap's in your bag? And so when you ask these qualifying questions to a customer, whether it's on the lanes or it's even in the pro shop, the thing that they're understanding is that you're taking the time to understand that you're trying to put them in the best ball possible. Now, it's the same thing as saying, once they kind of give you that motion and say, hey, I need something that's just going to kind of be transition for game 2, game 3. Now you kind of start following it down. Okay. It's like the same thing as saying, hey, go ahead and let me go ahead and drill you a bowling ball, but not taking a ball that they're most comfortable feeling and fitting, and not taking their stats and measurements off of there. And then literally, if their most comfortable ball also happens to be the ball, they like the way the ball kind of has a motion. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Take the dual angle numbers and slap it on the same ball, because you're guaranteed to not being problematic. And I use that instead of, something that would be, problematic happens when you don't take their ball, get their measurements, understand their PAP, and not ask the qualifying questions, because now I'm either going to get it right or I'm going to get it wrong. And you want to kind of eliminate that guesswork. So if this customer loves the way this ball works, then all you're simply doing is try that set of angles and layouts on that specific ball that you're recommending, and then go from there. And then literally that's how you kind of put it together. But
Yeah.
also surface, if you need surface, adjust the surface. I think you said it, or you had a mentor that said it, that said, you're never going to throw the same ball
Mhm.
coming from the factory the same way. It's easier if you go ahead and get the surface adjusted.
Yep.
Now, if you already know that the customer is going to throw it 900 miles an hour, if you shine that thing up like a marble, probably not going to make the most amount of sense. It's make sure that you get them set up as best as possible. It's even if we want to use the NASCAR advantage, they're the driver, you're the crew chief. You've just got to get everything set up for them the right way. And then here's the other thing that I will also say is staff. Follow up. You will get referrals. You will get attaboys. You will get big jams. You will get everything if you follow up. If you say, hey, how's that ball rolling? Everything going good with that ball? I saw you were looking really good with that. You're getting into the science of the philosophy of making sure that you're closing the sale and looking that eventually they can see you as a resource. And even if the ball, let's say, for some reason missed, but you're still following up with them, you're still trying, you're still doing X, Y, and Z, A, B, and C, the likelihood that they're going to talk to you or they're going to recommend you exponentially goes up every single time, because you're doing the right thing. And that is simply standing by the product and being there to help support every step of the way.
Yeah, I think that's for staffers, and what I don't want to happen as far as when it comes to staffing or anybody is somebody going to either the YouTube or something like that. Let's say take a Kobe Franklin, for example, and watch him throw the ball and says, you know what? I need a judge. All right, what do you have? A rhino. And I have this in the shop. Guy comes in, is like, I got a rhino, and I want a Black Widow 3.0. And I'm like, I'm not selling. I'm just not going to do it. You don't need that. And I know your game. That's just not it. What are you looking to do? Well, I just want a little bit more. Well, going to a 3.0 is not what you're trying to do. Okay, let's try and go here, or let's go here. But it's almost the point of, there's a point where you say, yes, that fits. And then there's a point where you have to say, no, that's not it.
Or there's a point where you're going to have to say cash or charge. So as a staffer, you're going to also have to say cash or charge. Now, one of the other qualifying things, Brandon, that you could also say to them is, bear in mind, we're now going to go to the top end of the spectrum. Okay. So what's going to happen is you're going to see a significant difference between your rhino versus your judge. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to come see me saying, hey, I need something that hooks a little bit less, because the simple fact is I put you at the top of the food chain. You're now sitting as the apex predator, and now you're going to have something that's got to be a little bit in between. And so by doing that, yes, you have some that they have money burning a hole in their pocket, and they're just going to want that ball. Okay, give them a disclaimer, give them the out, let them know they'll come see you when you have to get something that's a little bit less. But let them know that congratulations, you're now it's literally going from T-ball all the way up into MLB, and you've just bypassed all the AAA affiliates and everything in between in travel ball. So, it's okay. Because, it's also a status thing. One of those things that happens is Sometimes you do have league bowlers. If somebody walks in with a single ball bag that's over their shoulder and it has a rhino coming out of it, the first thing we're doing is dismissing them as being competitive. As a typical league bowler, you'd be like, man, okay, you got Fun League written all over you. So now they want to kind of be part of the in crowd. So by being part of the in crowd, they're going to drop a few $100s on a ball. And so at that point, it's just be there to hold their hand when they get shell shocked because this ball hooks a lot. And so the more that you're upfront and honest with them, now you're going to close another ball sale because the simple fact is they just need something that hooks a little bit less now.
Yeah, and that's the hard part as being staffer in pro shop, because when you, like you said, some people just wants to be at the top of the food chain. Oh, my buddy, I threw his blah blah blah, and it hooked someone, and I want that, and it's like, okay, well, let's talk about it. Oh, well, my buddy, he's 6'5", 260 of pure muscle, and I'm the 5'9", 160 guys. Okay, well, it works for him because of XYZ. For you, that may not be the thing. And I think that's what we don't want to just throw a swag ball in somebody's hand. And that's what I'm trying to get to the point of, that, oh, well, you're in the shot, throw this swag, blah, 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 instead of making sure we have the right thing in your hand. So that's why I'm glad that you're doing this workshop, because now it's more about understanding what they really need in their hand. Okay, instead of that, maybe you just need an Unreal. And that's going to give you what your buddy has, but for you specifically. And that's why I'm glad that we're doing something like this. And this is where it makes a lot of it a lot clearer for me. Yeah, I know what I can put in my hand because I'm the operator. But when you're talking about somebody else and you really don't know, okay, if this person, maybe they bowl at this center another day of the week, but you only see them here. So you have to be very careful of I just don't want us as staffers, as we are trying to promote the brand, just slapping a swag ball in somebody's hand. We have to get to a point where we have to say, this is what's best suited. Now, like you said, cash or credit at some point. If they say, well, I just want that, fine. There you go, have it. But if we are doing ourselves justice, we need to do it the correct way.
Well, and the other thing is this, I just simply want staff to have conversations. It's got to start with more conversations. It's got to start with more conversations in league. Even as crazy as it sounds, if as staff, I need you to not be elite players. What I need you to do is I need you to think like a regular league bowler. Turn to the guy that's to the pair next to you and say, hey, my name is Jim. I'm affiliated with Swag. Should you have any questions about our products, I'd be more than happy to help answer, and let me know how I can make your game better. And if they're like, okay, guy, you're not selling me anything, but yet I'll take a free tip. Hi, I am a professional, not professional, but I am a staffer. I can help give you some bowling tips. And eventually, make yourself available to them regardless of what the actual need is. As long as they understand that you're there coming at the right way, being genuine, there's not going to be an issue whatsoever. The problem that happens is when, I'm going to shoot 830 and I think you're kind of below me because, you're only averaging 570. And that's not the case. Honestly, more bowling balls are sold by people averaging less than 210. So just kind of marinate on that. And as long as we understand our audience and we cater to our audience the right way, I think everything's just going to kind of come through the right perspective. Any other questions that I can help answer?
Whoa.
I did have a couple comments, not necessarily questions. The Craze Pearl you guys were talking about, I got the Craze Pearl. And that fits right in between like the Geek and the Holic. And like you guys were saying, you could really trick that out. So I got a little bit of experience with that. So you could play straight up the boards, or if you trick your hand a little bit, that really you could, trick the whole lane. And that's a very versatile ball. And that's that line is going to be really nice going forward.
Fantastic, yeah, absolutely.
And then also with all the slides, it helps me a lot because, before Swag, I was only really throwing motive with the, roto grip or whatever here and there. So I'm not really familiar with other guys' balls. So when I have a question, what do you think? I'm trying to replace this ball. What do you think? So I'd have to say, okay, let me look. And I'd go look at the numbers on their ball. see what's next. But I think the slides that you have today is really going to help me out going forward to actually know on the spot which ball is similar to what ball from other brands. That's
I
that's
agree.
going to be a really nice thing for me, because that was my deal. Was I would always say, okay, let me go look, do some research, and see what I could find for you. But now I could be there on the spot, and then that probably gives you a little bit more trust in that area. Is that you know right off the top of your head this and that.
Is there
Match
anything that you would
your ball.
love? Is there anything that you would love to see in the future clinics?
Not. I mean, what we did today was really good. I love that. Maybe ball motions and the characteristics. You know, it skids past the wet, jumps off on the dry, or it's clean through the front, clean on the back. That kind of characteristic explanation of it. But other than
Okay.
that, I mean, it was really useful. Today I was late, but it's going to really help me out going forward with the knowledge you guys shared today.
I agree.
Got it. Diallo, what do you think you want to see for your next staff clinic?
Um, Kind of hard to say. I think we covered a lot in the last two clinics. Um, no really questions that I have on my mind.
Okay. Well, I'm going to come see you when I need to change out something on the Subaru because it looks like you had that thing dialed in.
Most definitely.
Right. You're going to have that. Brian, is there anything that you'd love for us to be able to do for a staff clinic?
Nothing's coming to mind at the moment.
Okay.
You know, I've shown a good bit of the new line. The only one I really didn't match up with very well was the Unreal. So the rest of them are all still in my bag. So
Got it. Well, when you see Chris Fox, let me give him a big hug for me, okay?
I'll see you Monday.
Hey, Brian,
All right.
I have a question for you because you said you didn't match up with the Unreal. What was it specifically about that ball that maybe didn't match up? Is it where you are, or is it just more so just didn't fit your game? Or
I put my favorite drilling on it, which is basically the pin about an inch and a half above the bridge
okay,
with the CG kicked toward my path. So uh, I tried it out of box. I took the surface down on it. I took the polish off of it. I took it to different levels. I skip sanded it. The only time I had any success with it, I had to really get inside, take almost all the speed off of it, and just roll it.
okay,
It just I'm very speed and rev matched, so
okay,
it just did not seem to line up with me the way I drilled it. Looking back at some of the other things on it, I think if I had maybe gone with a pin down layout, I might have been able to find a little bit more success out of that ball.
okay. Getting it to start up a little bit earlier.
I think so, because it just for what I was bowling on and everything else, and I tried it at 4 different houses locally, and I had the same experience in all of them.
Okay,
Just it did not align with the way I threw the ball.
okay,
So I was weary of getting the Apex. I did get an Apex Pearl, and I did put a pin down drilling on it, and I do like it.
okay,
So, but again, I think it's like you were saying earlier, it's an add-on ball. It's not one to replace something else. It's something to, you know, it's a get out of jail free card kind of ball. So if the lanes start getting squirrely, the heads start getting chewed up, things like that, I can get in with it and move my break point a little closer to me and keep it in front of me a little bit better. So,
okay.
and then the hybrid, I have the crazes. I have loved the core in that all the way back since my original Jerk Solid. That one's the one that I polished that one up. I can keep it in front of me, and yeah, that one won me a state championship. So
Oh wow, congrats on that.
Well, we also have a very interesting thing on that's developing is I don't know, maybe somebody's heard of that, not necessarily washed up, but that pro named Brian Valenta, kind of was with DV8, was on TV, kind of, gave Villanelle a little bit of a fit for a minute. You know, he's already gone 300, 800 with the Apex Solid. And also he just posted 1476 for six. So at the state tournament. So, he goes 780, 695. So, the more we keep talking, the more validity we keep getting. You see a lot more people that are giving us a try between Rash, now Brian Valenta, people that wouldn't necessarily give us a moment. And I think we're taking the moment. I think that's kind of the other big thing too. Kenny King was trying to get in, and for some reason it didn't go in with the thing, but a good thing we have this thing that is being recorded. And then Hobby, who is Hobby? I'm curious. Who is actually Hobby? Who's behind the name Hobby?
You hear me?
Yeah, we
Yep.
hear you.
All right. So I'm actually Carlos Tillman.
Gotcha.
That's my. But I've been listening. I'm not going to talk to y'all too long because I'm sure nobody wants to listen to me talk anyway.
Actually,
We want
your
to.
staff. Here's the thing. I don't know how I can make your life easier if I don't actually know what's going on for you. And
Hogan,
I
what's
see
up?
Hogan.
Roger that. So I came in late, but I do have the Fusion Hybrid. Haven't got it drilled yet. I have a teammate who has it and has bowled well with it. I probably will punch mine up. I don't know yet. I'm bowling pretty good with the Craze Hybrid, which a lot of people have underestimated, which I think is a really daggone good ball. Um, I practiced with it on Thursday night, previously with some buddies that I bowled with, and I bowled a 204, 226, and a 228. So I'm pretty consistent with it. But where I bowl at, I'm in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and where the houses are here in North Carolina, they are kind of more like on the light oil but heavy friction house. So that ball works pretty good at the house that I'm bowling at. And it works very well with manipulation in a sense. But
Nice.
I'm more of a down and in player. So I struggle when I move a little bit left. I can move left, but not over there by the ball return type thing like that. And still can get that ball to pick up pretty good. I left the polish on mine. I heard a lot of guys say they knocked the polish off of theirs, but it plays well in my bag for. I use that ball as a more late in the game. So when I'm in the third game and I see that my other bowling balls are starting to check up a little bit, that ball will hold me a little bit more with that. So I love the crazy line for sure. I have an Unreal as well. I left mine polished on my Unreal. I didn't take the polish off of it, and that ball is more angular for me, and it helps me. I can pull that ball kind of first out my bag, or a little bit later in the second game, and that ball is a good ball for me as well. And I also have the Dragon Solid and the Dragon Pearl. For me, I'm struggling with my Dragon Solid, and it may be the layout on it for me because I'm bowling a little bit more better with the Pearl than I am with the Solid. And there's two different layouts on it for me with those balls.
What's your
So,
Dragon Solid doing?
uh, I think it's a little bit too forward rolling for me. And I'm all
So it's kind
my
of like dying when it gets to the pocket.
it. Well, I might be wrong then because it's not dying at all. When it hits the pins, it hits and knocks them all over the place. I think it's me probably need to get lined up more better with it, and I think that's probably what I'm struggling with on that.
So is it hooking too much or hooking too little, or is it just kind of a little
It's
bit in between?
it's kind of in between. It's right in the middle. Cause I got it.
Are you box surface?
So I've done all that. Well, I give you a backstory to what I drilled. So I drilled the ball as in more control. So that's probably why I'm struggling with it in a sense because I have always drawn more of my stuff, more of my swag balls, especially my sauce, a little bit more on the stronger side.
Okay.
Which I usually do like 45 by 4 by 30. And
Okay.
I drilled this one 60 by 4.5 by 35.
Do me a
So
favor, knock your surface down to 500
uh-huh.
and then skip sand 2K and see if that gives you a little bit more of a help.
Okay. Okay.
Because
Uh,
what it sounds like is it may be misdigging or just not digging in the right spot. Try to give that a go and then just report back to me and let me know how it thinks on that. Is there anything that you would love to have us talk about on the next clinic?
I think y'all pretty much covered most of it. I definitely want to see like uh I I guess I would say like the if it's more for a wet dry or if it's a continuous ball, if it's angular, if it more kind of in that aspect. But other than that, the slides to me and everything, how they line up with other bowling balls has been perfect for me. My biggest struggle that I have where I stay at is that the bowling alley that I bowl at is a big Brunswick house. So trying to get somebody in a lot of what I get a lot of when I'm talking to people about swag and our bowling ball stuff is that they want it like right now.
Mm.
And because of the bowling alley that I bowl at and being that there are a Brunswick and Storm, they don't have our balls in there, so they're not wanting to wait that 2 or 3 days to ship it because if they're seeing something they like, they want to get it like right now, and that's the part that I struggle with on that end with that.
Is there another pro shop that's around that? Is there another pro shop in a different bowling center?
So we have that one that I bowl at, which is probably the main popular one. And then we have another one. There's like in Fayetteville, North Carolina, there's like 4 bowling alleys within 10 miles of each other, but one is barely open. I think another one is owned by a mafia. So, and then there's another one that doesn't. They're not gonna. I didn't try. They're not gonna affiliate with us at all and stuff. They're another like they're like Storm affiliated.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
So they will
Okay.
not do anything. But the one where I get my stuff drilled at, I get my stuff drilled at almost an hour from where I live at in a bowling alley from where I stay at. And they support us, but it how can I put it? It's like a I can say they support us, but they don't in a sense, I guess, which is kind of hard, it's kind of sounding redundant because they support that we're the staffer and we're bringing the bum balls to them and all that stuff like that, and we can talk to people about it, but they will not put. I won't say they won't. They have their issue was that the ball doesn't sell as good as the next ball or this that and the other, so they will not put a bowling ball. Excuse me, they will not put a bowling ball up on that wall.
So this is called a it's going to take a minute concept. Um, just because you're in a tough market. Um, Now persistence and consistency is what's going to be the key here. The more that you're consistent and the more that you're persistent, eventually things will kind of fall into place, especially as we kind of keep growing. Um, you know, I would say this is that, um, and actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here. So we're going to be just a touch under. Um, so I'm going to stop recording.